Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to another Looking for Work session here on LinkedIn. My name is Wesley. I'll be filling in for Mike today, who is out on another meeting. Be answering some questions, hanging out, chatting about what it's like to look for a job as a software developer, today's current job seeking conditions, whatever other questions you may have. So welcome. I'm going to hang out for a minute or two here, let folks jump on in, get some questions posted. Thank you for hanging out with me in the meantime. I guess I can start with a little bit of background about myself while I wait for folks to jump in and start sending some questions my way. So, like I said, my name's Wesley. I've been coding for well over a decade, doing it professionally for more than 5 years, 6 years now, a couple years. I started at a coding boot camp back in the day, learning full stack development using C# and Angular. So yeah, definitely started out with the boot camp, moved over into a web development role. I worked at Miva Merchant, a local e-commerce platform. So worked on implementing and maintaining web stores for local companies that were selling things online. After working there for a little while, I realized that I liked back-end work, and I wanted to dig a little bit deeper on that side and kind of go more into the data science, data engineering route. So went back for some more school, and I ended up teaching and working in data engineering for a few years after that. So kind of jumped all over the board. Done a lot of different things as far as development work goes, and then now I'm able to leverage all of that different experience in kind of a senior engineering management type role. So working with our apprentices here at the San Diego Code School, creating Coding Careers apprenticeship program. Definitely able to learn a lot and grow a lot with our apprentices while helping them and sharing kind of the skills, tips, and tricks and experience I've picked up along the way. So definitely excited to answer any questions that you folks may have. Feel free to throw them in the comments here. Let's see, let's make sure that I'm able to view those. Cool. Awesome. So I'm able to see your comments. Make sure you throw any questions that you have in chat here. I think now's a good time if you are a job seeker. Now's a good time to be kind of polishing off your resume, making sure your portfolio is in good shape, and renewing your efforts. I think right now a lot of companies are definitely looking, driving their efforts towards getting more folks onto their teams now that COVID is seemingly settling down or getting a little bit more tame than it was last year. So now is very much a good time to be putting that work in to be job ready. So definitely looking forward to any questions that you may have. Pull my other screen here, make sure I'm not missing any questions. Awesome. Looking forward to definitely looking forward to answering any questions that you folks may have. I know Mike usually has some more filler for these moments here. I'm relying on your questions. I need you folks to be asking me things so that I know what to be talking about here. Otherwise, I'm going to be telling you the same sort of advice that I think Mike gives in a lot of these sessions. Our tried and true basics are, projects, passion projects, portfolio work, showing people what you can do by doing it. So I think that's definitely what we look for when we're hiring folks, and what we preach to all of our apprentices, that they need to have something that they're working on, that they're ready to show employers, beyond just being able to talk about projects and talk about work experience. Having something that you're excited about, that you have built, you've put hands on keyboard and put time into, is definitely important, and that passion shines through in interviews. So I think it's helpful from so many different angles to find a project, even if it's not something that you are head over heels in love with, something that you is related to maybe a hobby that you have, or an interest from a previous project you've worked on, or a previous job that you've had that you want to, tackle a problem in a new light, or maybe use code for something that you hadn't used code before. Anything that is a relevant problem to you is going to get you in some way excited as you're talking about that project. And I think that's the most important thing, is having work that you are excited about and are able to convey that passion. Folks are going to pick up on that, and they're going to want that on their team. They're going to want that, helping out in their trenches as they try and get things done. So passion projects are always huge. You can obviously round yourself out with some certifications and other things like that. Volunteer work is always great. If you aren't someone who speaks at meetups or attends meetups, that's another huge area where you can be putting in job seeking efforts. Just making sure that you attend those events where you're able to rub elbows and network with other folks that are in the roles that you're looking for at the companies that you're looking to join. Huge value that you can get out of that, and a great way to kind of put yourself front and center at those sometimes larger meetups is by speaking. And can sound daunting. It can sound, painful if you are someone who doesn't enjoy speaking, but many meetups will have a lightning talk format, or some, short speech format where you don't have to get up and talk and answer questions for, 15, 20 minutes, at, half an hour. You're up there for 3 to 5 minutes, quickly going through a couple of slides, talking about, some small piece of technology or some small project that excites you. Definitely a great way to practice those skills of talking technical. It's a great way to get yourself out there in front of folks that may be hiring or have openings on their teams. So passion projects, meetups, always going to hear us talking about those kind of fundamentals. Looks like we have a question coming through. So we're looking for job resume advice for less than a year experience in HTML, CSS, and React. Great question. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you set yourself up for success with maybe a little bit less experience or less time coding? And I think from my perspective, if I'm looking at a resume and someone is a little bit lighter on actual experience and time, I'm going to look for those passion projects. So like I said earlier, having some piece of code that you've built, some simple front end interface that interacts with an API that maybe you didn't build the API, but you're interacting with the API with your front end. Some piece of code or some project that you've built that you're excited about and you're able to share in those interviews is going to go a long way. So that's how you show that while maybe you don't have as much time as some of the other candidates, you can still do what you need to in order to be successful in the job. You can still build things, you can still get things done, you can still interact with other members of the engineering team, because you can interact with APIs even if you don't have a ton of experience building them. So from that perspective, I'd say, have some code that you've built, have something that you've done yourself that you're ready to talk about. And then when you're looking at building your resume and kind of prepping your LinkedIn and doing all of that, you want to make sure that you find relevant tasks or relevant responsibilities in previous jobs that you can kind of apply towards coding that might not be technically related. So maybe you worked at a fast food restaurant or something like that. And so you needed time management skills, you needed organization, you needed, task management in order to be able to be successful. And while you weren't writing code there, that's something that you can directly apply to being a software engineer. I think that's one thing that maybe earlier career folks or folks that don't have as much software engineering experience might do wrong, is they might downplay their previous experience, or they might think that it wasn't technical enough, so it's not relevant or it's not important. And I think it's really just about speaking to it correctly and telling the right story, if that makes sense. So that's what I'd encourage you to do, is have a passion project, have something that you're excited about that you can talk about, and then any other job experience that you have, or any other credentials or learning that you've done, just find ways that you can relate it to software engineering, and I think you'll be in good shape. Be able to speak to that, and no one will be able to question you at that point, because you'll show that you have the skills necessary from a soft skills perspective, and then you'll have that project to show that you can build things too. No way they can't hire you at that point, right? Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. That's a good question, and I think there's probably plenty of other folks that are in the same boat that have been maybe taking some of this time during the pandemic to learn some new skills and get some new experience, and so they're ready to apply that in a new role, and so they're doing the same thing as you. So I think having that passion project and just really making sure that your previous experience is related to or attributed to the software engineering skills that you can kind of speak to. I think that's super important. Awesome. Another question coming through. Is it better to work on large passion projects or frequent small passion projects to get your reps in? It's a great question. So I think the way that I usually approach it is I want to have, maybe one bigger project that I'm continuously working on, one larger passion project. That way there's not a lot of that overhead thinking time around what do I need to build, research work. I always have tasks that when I'm ready to jump in and just work on my passion project, get some coding time in, I can quickly jump over and I don't need to do a lot of investigation from a high level, if that makes sense. So I like having, one big project where I can sink time into, but it takes a while to maybe get to that point where you have that idea or you have that project that you know is going to consistently motivate you. So I'd encourage you to try new technologies, try things in smaller projects, and then when you find that one that really excites you, build yourself a backlog and run with it. So I think there's a time and a place for both. Larger projects can make it easier for you to get those, consistent reps in because you're not doing as much investigation or mental overhead, as I kind of call it. But then those small projects are important for you to quickly test new technologies, quickly try things out. Maybe you get an idea and you want to chase it down. So find the balance. But I like to have a big project in the back pocket and use small projects as kind of experimental testing grounds, training grounds. It's a great question. And I think what we call big and small might differ from person to person. I think it's hard to kind of define that, but I'd say a small project is something that you think you could knock out in like a weekend, maybe a week if you were working on it consistently. But a larger project is kind of one of those endless bottomless pits where you can always find more tickets to pull it up, always find more things to be working on. So maybe think of it as like, building an MVP versus going for a final product. You can use the MVPs as your small projects, and then once you find something that really excites you, build that backlog and go for a more finished product with it. Great question. Let me know what follow-up you have. Definitely big fan of passion projects, so I love talking about the right way to go about it. And I think, like I said, finding that balance between the two sizes is going to get you the most bang for your buck. You're going to find that you are able to quickly learn new skills by applying them, but then I think it's easier to keep those habits up if you have a larger project where you're just able to jump in and you don't have to do a lot of thinking. You can just start coding. Getting some great questions here. Let me know what else you all have. Happy to answer anything else that comes across the board. I think both of those questions kind of fall in line with our general advice, passion projects, going to meetups, networking with folks. It's all going to be super effective, especially for folks that are a little bit earlier on in their coding careers. Definitely a big fan of both of those, especially now that it's starting to get safer to think about meeting in person. I know folks are still getting vaccinated and everything, but attendance is still good at online meetups, and I think it's only going to grow from there. And a lot of companies will use meetups as a way to scout potential talent, meet folks, and see what's going on in industry. So awesome. Another good question coming through here. How long does imposter syndrome last? And the answer is forever. I think you will get that answer from most folks. I don't think it ever goes away. And I think that's a good thing. I think imposter syndrome is one of the best feelings that you have to get over early on, because if you have imposter syndrome, that means you're pushing yourself and you are growing, you're doing something new, you're doing something challenging. I think there's a balance there, but in general, I would encourage you to chase that imposter syndrome, because it means you are going outside of your comfort zone. You're pushing that bubble a little bit. You're pushing your boundaries, and you're growing. So imposter syndrome never goes away. I experience it all the time, and I love it. You have to kind of give into it, and it doesn't feel good. When I say I love imposter syndrome, I don't mean that like it's an enjoyable experience, but it's something to seek, in my opinion. So that's my 2 cents on imposter syndrome. It never goes away, and that should be a good thing. Great question, though. I think, like I said, there's a balance. You want to make sure that you aren't trying to become a CTO after 6 months of coding experience, and for the most part, you're going to get weeded out of those roles, by the teams that are doing the hiring. But across the board, I think there's always opportunities for folks to kind of punch above their weight class, if you will. So you'll see job postings that have 2 to 3 years of experience, and I see that as like entry level right there. You can right away that 2 to 3 years of experience. So find that balance where you are willing to kind of push yourself and maybe go a little bit above what you're used to. But yeah, imposter syndrome by and large is a good thing to be chasing. Do you find yourself having imposter syndrome with each new language, and is that normal? Good question. So I don't find it quite as much on like a language to language or framework to framework basis, and I think it comes more like working in new fields or challenging larger problems. It's a good question. It's hard for me to really articulate it, but I think it comes more with tackling challenges that are maybe abstracted from what you've done before. So to give you an example from kind of what I've been doing lately, I was a software engineer, a data engineer, and then now I work more on the management side of that. So it kind of the imposter syndrome came from that abstraction of the challenge of not only am I kind of working in code, but now I'm working with people who are working in code. And so I think you'll find that as you code more, you feel less of that imposter syndrome when you jump from JavaScript into Python into Ruby or something like that. That kind of goes away, and then you'll have more brain bandwidth available to tackle bigger problems like architecting software or integrating with other teams or the business side of the challenges that you face and things like that. So kind of rambling here, but I hope that helps to answer your question. I think the challenges kind of come in a different lane than just jumping from language to language or framework to framework. And I think earlier on in your career, it's good to be getting exposure to those new languages, because that imposter syndrome will go away on that front. You'll get good at getting good with a new language, and then you'll, like I said, you'll be free to move on to other challenges and tackle other things. Great questions. Very, very good questions coming through from Stephanie. So thank you for those. If you have any questions about the job search or being a software engineer or anything that you think I can help answer, please throw it in the chat. I would be more than happy to try and answer, give you some anecdotes, speak from my experience. Thank you, Dwayne and Stephanie, for throwing questions in so far. Like I said, I think this is a good time to be in that job search mode. I think plenty of folks are sick of their cabin fever. They're over it, ready to get back into full swing. And I think plenty of organizations are going to be kind of showing that sentiment in their job postings. So definitely think you are all in a good position to be polishing off the resume, working on a passion project, going to meetups, networking with folks, and getting yourself in a position to be ready for that. Gonna hang out for a few more minutes here, see if any more questions come through. Again, I appreciate all of you that have hung out with me thus far. Thank you, Stephanie and Dwayne, for your questions. Definitely think it's good information. If you like this sort of information, this sort of content, this definitely happens on a weekly basis. So we encourage you to come out every Tuesday. Usually you've got Mike Roberts here who will be answering your questions as well. We also chat plenty about these sort of topics at the San Diego JavaScript meetup. So anyone who is interested in JavaScript, you are welcome to come by, especially if you're in the San Diego area. Right now, those are being hosted remote. You can find us on meetup.com. Definitely encourage you to check those out. Awesome. Hey, Brandon, nice to see you. Hope everything's going well. Brandon is someone who attended a similar program to the one that I went to back in the day. I worked as an instructor while Brandon was finishing up his journey at SDCS. He went through the same job search that some of you are going through. So hopefully he can attest to the power of the Passion Project and the meetups. Brandon was definitely a meetup faithful. He was a meetup regular for the San Diego JavaScripts. We got a thumbs up there. That's the confirmation I need. Awesome. Another question here. How many hours of Waka time do you think is normal for a full-time software engineer? It's a good question, and I think it varies. I think it's kind of hard to come up with a magic number for Waka time, simply because what you work on is going to greatly influence how much time you're spending in the code editor. For instance, if you're doing some WordPress development or e-commerce development and you're in a web-based platform, you're in a GUI, you're not going to be spending as much time in the code editor. You might be copying and pasting, moving things around, making some edits there, but you're going to be in the browser for a lot more time. Versus if you're working on a full stack JavaScript project where you're just constantly in the editor. So hard to come up with a magic number. I'd say if you're spending a majority of your time, over half of your time, you're in good shape, but it's not something that you want to bend over backwards to be hitting, because if you're doing a bunch of WordPress stuff, chances are you're going to be in the WordPress GUI a lot more than your code editor. So that's what I'd say there. Hard to come up with a magic number, but definitely be shooting to be coding as much as possible. That's a good broad strategy to have. Awesome. We got a follow-up. I'm working on foundational languages and skills: SQL, PHP, jQuery, more PHP, and Git. Am I on the right track, or should I look into other skills? Great question. I'd say across the board, those are all excellent things to be working in. jQuery is going to be especially relevant if you're doing, more WordPress, e-commerce, web development type stuff. PHP, it sounds like that's kind of the track that you're leaning towards. I think from your previous comment, you said you were working in React. So another backend language, backend framework that you could consider is Node. I would consider some server-side JavaScript in Node using Express. That would be another way to kind of round out your full stack skills, but it sounds like you are definitely on the right track. SQL and Git are kind of more of the slept on skills, you might say, where folks might consider them a little bit less important, but those are the types of things that are kind of give you a little bit more credibility. Having those and having experience and projects that you can speak about in those realms is going to be great. SQL is never going to serve you wrong. Learning more SQL, from software engineers to data analysts, across the board, everybody needs to interact with data. And so learning SQL on some level, project managers, business analysts, everyone should learn SQL. Can't go wrong there. So I think you got a great list there. Like I said, the only thing I might tack on if you're interested more in the like full stack software engineering over e-commerce and web development would maybe sprinkling in a little bit of Node and Express. But I think you got a great list and you are definitely on the right track. Great question. Let me know if you have any follow-up. I think it's hard to sometimes pick a specific skill or stack out of the flurry of buzzwords, keywords, acronyms that get thrown at us. So having we call it a T-shaped skill set is the goal, where you have kind of broad knowledge across a lot of areas, but then you go deep in a specific subject or two, where you kind of have that deep experience and knowledge in a few different facets. Definitely a big fan of that. So sounds like you are doing a great job getting that broad coverage there. Absolutely. Great questions. Thank you for sending those my way. Let me know if you have any other questions. Anyone else, you're welcome to send them over in chat. We'll give it a few more minutes I'll hang out a little while longer, see what other questions I can answer before signing off for the afternoon. Like I said earlier, I'll keep saying it. Meetups, join us, meetup.com/SDJS, I believe is the URL that you need to get to San Diego JavaScript meetups. I'm going to confirm that right now. It looks like that is not what you want, so let me get you the proper meetup here. Might be San Diego JS. That one sounds a little bit better. It does. So meetup.com/San Diego JS is what you want. Definitely encourage you to show up to the monthly meetup, or if you're learning React, there's a React monthly. There's a meetup for just about every major framework that is popular here in San Diego. Great way to network. Again, we usually at the monthly meetup have a talk or a section where we discuss, job seekers and give them a chance to talk about themselves. Anyone who has a position at their company can talk about their company and what sort of openings they have. So definitely encourage you to check those out. Give it another minute here, see if any last minute questions come by. Thank you to everyone for hanging out with me thus far. I always enjoy these sessions. I think they're helpful. I feel like sometimes I come across as a broken record talking about the passion projects, meetups, and just keeping your hands on the keyboard. But it's what I've seen work. It's what's worked for me, and I think it's. I don't think there's any chance we'll be deviating from that plan anytime soon. So as long as it keeps working, definitely going to keep encouraging you to do just that. So I think we are out of questions for today. I'm going to wrap up, stop rambling here, let you all get back to your lunch breaks. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sending over questions. I hope you guys found this helpful in some way, and we look forward to seeing you next time, next Tuesday, here in the same spot, same time. Thanks. Happy Tuesday, folks.